Dmitri never thought that his life would change so drastically one day. It all started with a simple decision to go to the wilderness, away from the hustle and bustle of the city, for a vacation. He could not imagine that this trip would become the beginning of his worst nightmare. He rented a house in the forest, away from everyone. Nature, silence, and complete solitude seemed to him ideal for rest. However, this house had its own history, which Dmitri learned about too late. The first few days passed calmly. Dmitri walked through the forest, picked mushrooms, and simply enjoyed the silence. He brought several books with him and planned to spend the entire vacation reading and recuperating. But as soon as the third night came, something changed in the house. Lying in bed, Dmitri heard a faint rustling outside the window. It could have been the wind or an animal, but something in this sound alerted him. He got up and went to the window to check what it could be. But in the darkness, nothing was visible. Returning to bed, he tried to fall asleep again, but sleep did not come. The rustling did not stop, but only grew louder. Now it seemed that it was coming not only from the street, but also from inside the house. Dmitri felt fear seize him. He slowly got out of bed, put on his jacket, and carefully walked out of the bedroom. The hallway was dark, but the light of his flashlight picked out strange shadows from the darkness that were moving along the walls. They seemed alive, as if they were trying to hide from the light. Dmitri took a deep breath and moved forward. When he reached the kitchen, he heard quiet laughter coming from the next room. He froze. There should have been no one in the house except him. Dmitri took a step towards the room, but the door suddenly slammed shut, as if someone was standing on the other side and pushing it. His heart pounded in his chest. He slowly approached the door and pressed his ear to it, trying to hear at least something. Silence. Not a sound. The door opened slightly, and a cold wind slid across his skin. Dmitri jerked back. Now he knew for sure there was something in the house, something he couldn't explain. He decided to go back to the bedroom, lock the door, and wait for the morning. But when he reached his room, another terrible discovery awaited him. His clothes were lying on the bed, neatly folded, as if someone was preparing for his arrival. Dmitri felt cold again. An eerie premonition grew inside him that the house was not empty at all. He looked around the room, but saw nothing suspicious, except for strange shadows that continued to move along the walls. That night, he couldn't fall asleep. Every minute seemed like an eternity. Dmitri lay in bed, listening to the shadows in the corners of the room whispering something in an unknown language. Their whispers grew louder until they turned into a hum. The next day, Dmitri decided to leave. This house no longer seemed safe to him. He gathered his things and rushed to the car. But when he started the engine, he realized that the car would not start. The fuel was in place, but the engine was stubbornly silent. Panic began to take hold of him. He tried to call, but the mobile phone did not work. Dmitri felt his heart pounding wildly. He was locked here, alone, in this damned house. When he returned inside, he found a note on the table. It was not there in the morning. He slowly walked to the table and picked up the paper. The writing on it was not his own. "You will not leave." Dmitri felt a wave of fear wash over him. He looked around the room, but no one was there. Someone or something was playing with him, making him afraid. But who? The fear only intensified during the night. Dmitri heard footsteps outside the door, laughter in the hallway, and rustling in the corners of the room. The shadows grew denser, shrinking around him as if trying to swallow him. Several days passed, but each one was like a repeat of the previous one. The house did not let him go. Dmitri tried to escape, but each time his efforts ended in failure. The car did not start, the phones did not work, and the forest around the house seemed endless, as if a time loop had closed at this point. Every night he had nightmares. In his dreams, the house came to life, the walls reached out to him, and the shadows became real creatures, whispering the same thing in his ear: "You are one of us." One night, in another panic attack, Dmitri tried to break down the door leading to the attic. He hoped that upstairs he would find a way out, some kind of clue. But as soon as he opened the hatch and went up, a terrible cold enveloped him. There was nothing in the attic except for one old chair standing in the middle of the room. There were claw marks on its surface, and old papers were scattered around it. Dmitri walked up to them and began to read them. It turned out that the house was once a refuge for scientists involved in occult practices. They tried to study the darkness and its nature by opening portals to other dimensions. However, something went wrong, and the house became a home for creatures hiding in the shadows. These creatures absorbed fears, slowly destroying those who were in the house. Dmitri felt his breathing quicken. Now everything became clear. The house is a trap. It feeds on fear, slowly consuming those who remain in it. It has become a part of this place. The last night became unbearable for him. The shadows no longer whispered, they screamed, demanding his life. Dmitri could not bear this horror any longer. He screamed, trying to break out of the house, but the doors were locked. The windows were sealed. His last scream was drowned in darkness, and the shadows covered him completely.